Alright, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice? Stick around and find out. This is really slow, isn't it? That theme doesn't sound near as cool when all you hear is my... But I really like the way they use it. I really like what Hans Zimmer came up with for the Superman theme in Man of Steel, which returns again in Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and spiritblade.com with an uncut review of Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice. Alright, so let me give you a little synopsis. The IMDb, minus one word I'm going to blank out, synopsis reads, fearing the actions of Superman are left unchecked, Batman takes on the Man of Steel, while the world wrestles with what kind of a hero it really needs. With Batman and Superman fighting each other, a new threat, blank, is created by Lex Luthor. It's up to Superman and Batman to set aside their differences along with Wonder Woman to stop Lex Luthor and blank from destroying Metropolis. I'm putting that on the off chance that you didn't watch some of the more recent trailers for this, have been trying to be on media blackout and stuff. I don't even think they should have mentioned Wonder Woman there, but whatever. Yeah, so this is going to be a spoiler-free review. I'm going to have, I think, another video that'll go up shortly after this where I'll just go nuts on spoilers and talk about what I experienced. I hope you'll come back for that one after you see the movie, but this one should be safe for you if you watch it before seeing the movie. So let's talk about the story a little bit. Now, if you liked Man of Steel, I think you're probably going to like this one. I loved Man of Steel. I went in with some reservations, and I also went in with reservations about this movie, but I really, really enjoyed it a lot. It's my kind of superhero movie. I'm not really into the Marvel movies, what they've been doing for a long time now, which is, you know, just kind of fun and I don't know, whatever. This is like weighty. This is weighty. There's emotional weight. There's weighty issues that people are dealing with, weighty experiences people are dealing with, and an overall very serious tone. There are chuckles, but they're brief and rare releases from the tension. Yay! That's how I prefer my superhero movies. So if you like a serious superhero movie, but maybe that has more spectacle than, say, the Chris Nolan Batman movies, that cuts loose a little bit more with the action than those movies did, then I think you're really going to enjoy this experience. It's also a very character-driven experience. Now, if you're a person who really likes story and story structure and story just kind of progressing in this beautifully mathematical equation, a canonical way, this is probably not going to be your experience. Now, I don't know that because story tends to kind of go off of my radar when I'm really experiencing a movie or a book with characters that I'm invested in. I'm just kind of like, I don't care about your precious story and how beautifully constructed it is. I just want characters that I can care about. And that can be the result of script, that can be the result of performances, that can be the result of score, that can be the result of all kinds of different things that come together that allow me to care about characters. And there are far too few experiences in movies, games, any medium of fiction for me that I really feel like I care about the characters. And that was certainly true for me in Man of Steel. I cared about so many of those characters, and I really found myself caring about the characters in Batman vs. Superman. The Lois and Clark romance/relationship has moved forward a ton and yields some interesting things. It's surprising because they don't give like a boatload of screen time to it, but you can just see how it's advanced, and you invest in that. At least I did. I invested in their relationship. Clark still has a deep relationship with his mom, Martha Kent, and in a sense still with his dad, which they explore in an interesting way. His mom clearly loves him deeply, and it shows as she's kind of struggling with kind of what kind of counsel to give him. You know, you see in one of the trailers, she effectively says, yeah, be their hero, be what they want you to be, or you know what, be none of that, because you don't owe them anything. So, just like Pa Kent did in the first movie, I think she knows what the right thing is, and she wants to present that to him as an option, but at the same time, she loves her son, and she just wants to side with him and care for him, and I feel like I would struggle with the same thing if it was my son grown up trying to, asking me, should I go out and basically, give up any semblance of a normal, happy life so that I can just serve humanity? I'd be like, oh, I don't know, kiddo. I mean, I would want to tell him, yes, do that. That is so Christ-like. That is so good for you to have that kind of perspective. But as a parent, So I felt like her love for him, as well as her moral compass, were both kind of like present, and it was wonderful, wonderful, and very relatable. Bruce Wayne is still dealing with the death of his parents, and I think that's wonderful. You have to do that every time you have a movie that's featuring Batman. You've got to hammer again, remind us what the death of his parents meant to him, because when you forget that, then suddenly he's just a guy in a rubber suit. You know, maybe filmmakers feel like they shouldn't do that every time there's a Batman movie. Oh, we don't want to keep hammering that. Yes, hammer it. He's not over it. If he was over it, he would hang up the rubber suit. But he's a little bit messed up because of this horrific thing that happened to him as a child, and you have to remind us of that so that we will care about what's driving him. We will want to kind of root for him, even as we feel bad that he's living in such a tragic, mental and emotional state. So absolutely them coming back, dealing with the death of his parents again, and showing us how he's still working through it, or not working through it. And also there's hints of tragedies over the years that he's had to endure. So it's very character-driven stuff with Bruce Wayne. I love it. Clark is still struggling, not still struggling even more so now, with the fact that many of the world are fearing him, they're hating him, or they're even blaming him for Zod's horrific acts at the end of Man of Steel. This is not a world where Superman is a beacon of light to everyone, and there was a time when I would have been concerned about that I felt like, Superman should be the one that everybody trusts, everyone loves, and stuff like that. And as insiders, as audience members who don't exist in this world, we know that actually he is those things. He is a beacon of hope. He is a beacon of light. He is a person that I would trust my son to be around. Maybe even if I wasn't there, unlike the Superman in the comics who's always angry and burning things. But anyway, hopefully DC will fix that eventually. Come on, DC. But anyway, despite this not being a world where he's a beacon of light to everyone, he has never, I don't think, resembled Jesus more in how he does in this movie, because in this movie he's enduring shame, he's enduring hatred, and all while giving everything that he has to save the world from death. There's some beautiful pictures of Jesus in this movie. Some that I am convinced were intentional, others that may have not been, but God in his sovereignty, I think, brings them out just the same through this movie. Anyway, there's a few unclear moments in the story where seeds seem to be planted for a future Justice League movie, but it's nothing that disrupts the main story. I kind of knew what these seeds were and their significance because I'm familiar with the DC universe, but I asked my wife afterward, how did you feel about that weird thing that just showed up and you didn't know what was going on? And her response was basically that it happened and then it passed, and she was back in the story without worrying about what she didn't understand in that little weird moment there. So it doesn't bring the story down, I don't think, in any way. The main focus of the movie is Batman and Superman, and Wonder Woman is a distant third. So I want to be clear about that. One of the fears that I had was that they were going to be trying to cram way too many characters. There's cameos of 3 other characters that are going to, I'm sure, be in the Justice League movie, but the way those cameos happen is very organic to this story, and it makes sense, and they don't spend time introducing who they are. They don't need to. It wouldn't make sense to do that in this story, but they're still there. It was really kind of neat how they did that. They're really just they almost didn't even need to be in this movie, but they were just nice little cameos there. So really the bulk of the time is given to Batman and Superman. Wonder Woman's a distant third. They don't really go into her character. She just kind of serves as this somewhat of a mysterious figure that comes on the scene, and I think she works fine in that way. I don't think we have to understand everything about who she is, where she comes from, and I think she still kind of fits in this story. There's plenty of action, but also plenty of time dealing with characters and the fallout from Zod's attack. This is a world where destruction is weighty and significant. So when something blows up, unlike, say, in what I have felt and experienced in Marvel movies, when a car blows up or a building, a side of a building explodes or something like that, in those movies I'm like, whoa, that's crazy, whoa. And in this movie, as it was in Man of Steel, when something like that happens, I'm like, oh my gosh, because the way they tell these stories and the world that they have set up indicates to me that there is probably death that is happening. People are probably dying, and we're going to feel at some point, or someone in the story is going to feel at some point, the fallout from that. So it's action that is in every way the spectacle that you would find in, say, a big Marvel Avengers movie, but that spectacle, I wasn't numb to that spectacle as I was in the Avengers 2 especially, and in other Marvel movies, because I was feeling the emotional weight of the consequences of that spectacle, and that's a really important thing for me. So let's see here. So when the blows are exchanged between characters as well, I also felt the emotional motivations of those blows, because they set them up in advance. What's driving each of these characters? Why they feel so passionately they have to fight this person? What it means to them? So you know what it means to them when they are punching each other out. It's just not, there's been a misunderstanding, brr, oh, I'm angry, so like if you compare it to, like, say, the fight between Thor and Captain America and Iron Man in the Avengers, that was just kind of a cool thing to see these guys going at each other. Oh, there was a little misunderstanding and now they're going to blows. No, when these guys go to blows, it's because there are major things at stake that are driving them to go at each other like that. And so I feel those blows in a much more intense, engaging way. Now, I've heard that critics are slamming this movie. I'm really interested to get into those reviews. I didn't want to touch any of them before processing and having my own thoughts on this, so I don't know why the critics, I guess, are slamming this movie. I wouldn't be surprised to hear that people who prioritize story over character in fiction have issues with this movie, because the structural tidbits of plot development really aren't on my radar much when I have characters that I can care about, as I certainly did in this movie. So if you're a story person, you maybe take my review with a grain of salt. If you really care about, if you prioritize, I should say, character-driven stories, and maybe the story itself doesn't really matter, it's construction and all that, clever, skilled stuff, of constructing stories mathematically or whatever the crap. If you want characters that you can care about, I think you're going to find that in this movie. And I think you will, even if you don't have experience with the DC universe. I do wonder sometimes if my knowledge of the DC universe, I for years have been a fan of the DC universe until the New 52. That's when I was like, oh, they are screwing up everything, goodbye. I still have all my old great DC comics, but I know these characters, and I know their hurts, their pains, what they long for, and so I wonder if some of that kind of made some moments more emotional for me. But in talking to my wife afterward, who has very little exposure and knowledge of the DC universe, I don't think it added much. I think that what they set up in the movie itself provides the emotional basis for those kinds of heart-wrenching or weighty moments. So when the final villain appears at the end, I thought, okay, well, this is when things will start to suck and be all about CG and explosions. I was like, okay, just kind of brace yourself, Peter. This is kind of where it's going to go downhill a bit and kind of end with a whimper. I could not have been more wrong. The most emotionally satisfying parts of this movie were during the last fight with the villain and after that. They leave things in an interesting place, and I cannot wait to see what they do when they pick up the threads of this story in, I assume, the Justice League movie coming out in 2 or 3 years. So let's talk about the actors now that I've talked about the story in as vague terms as possible, but hopefully helped you to get an idea of what your experience is going to be. So all the actors deliver solid performances at the very least. Henry Cavill is back as Clark Kent and Superman, and he's still great and relatable as both of those characters. Diane Lane is back as Martha Kent, who doesn't have a ton of scenes, but is really, I just feel for her. I care about her whenever she appears in this movie. Amy Adams back as Lois Lane. She's actually a major part of the story. I was afraid from the trailers that she was going to get sidelined and he would just have one conversation with her and then go back to fighting Batman or something. No, she's a major part of the story and the action, and she was both strong, funny, and fragile when appropriate. Now, I did have concerns about Ben Affleck, as many people did, but his Bruce Wayne to me was unsurprisingly great. I thought he's going to have a solid, suave, cool Bruce Wayne. It was his Batman I was concerned about, but the effects that they used on his voice, although I was concerned in the trailers, like, I don't know if this is going to fly for me, it actually won me over very quickly. I was very surprised about that. It's maybe not my favorite Batman performance, but certainly up there around Christian Bale somewhere. I think as far as Batman goes, Michael Keaton has the Batman performance I prefer. As far as Bruce Wayne goes, maybe Christian Bale, or actually maybe I would say Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne I probably like the best. But I do think that his Batman performance is somewhere up there with Christian Bale, which I thought was really pretty solid. Gal Gadot does a solid job also with what was required of her in playing Wonder Woman, but it wasn't that much that was required of her. I'm still not quite convinced of her battle rage face, right before she goes into battle. I'm like, that looks like a model that someone just said, okay, now you're angry. Be angry face. Give us your angry face. So I wasn't quite totally convinced that she was like, freaking battle rage, which I would love to see in a performance from Wonder Woman. I really want to see her just go at it. It didn't feel like she was quite super hardcore invested. I don't know, maybe what I did was just a little scary and nobody would want to see that on Wonder Woman, but anyway, that was a small issue. It was easily overlooked. I think for what she was supposed to do in this movie, she did a rock solid job. I did have trouble with Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, as I wondered if I might. In this movie, he's not like a powerful businessman. He's a brat who inherited his fortune from his father rather than building it himself. He's super intelligent, but he's more like a brat and nuisance than an intimidating threat. He is not intimidating. He's like that jerk supervisor at work, who many of us have had at some point, maybe working retail or wherever, who is like 10 to 20 years younger than you. He's fresh out of college. He loves exercising power. He's very insecure and shallow and immature. You know, so he's like, he's threatening in that you like, who knows what this stupid kid is going to do and that I'm going to have to deal with. So he's threatening in that sense, but he's not intimidating at all, and he's not menacing, he's not like imposing at all. And I kind of miss that. I kind of like that in my Lex Luthor. But, you know, I'm willing to kind of accept a new interpretation of him. It didn't like wreck the movie or anything like that, and I wasn't like cringing every time he appeared. I was just like, this doesn't do it for me as much as like, say, a Bryan Cranston from Breaking Bad Lex Luthor would have been. I think a much older one, like a Bryan Cranston Lex Luthor, oh dude, especially Bryan Cranston. Oh, that rumor, man, if you weren't aware, there was a rumor early on that never panned out that Bryan Cranston was going to play Lex Luthor in this movie, but I still wish that would have happened. Lex, though, is left in a place where he may be a much better villain and a much more intense and dark villain in future appearances in Justice League or Superman movies. And so I'll look forward to what he does there. I think there's definitely some good potential. But in this movie, he was more annoying pest than threat. Thankfully, he's not a major focus until near the end of the movie. As far as the stunts and visuals, there's nothing that raises the bar for me, but the action and the effects are still awesome to watch. I mean, this is a Zack Snyder movie. And after this, you know, I doubted him going into Man of Steel. I doubted him going into this one. I don't think I can say Zack Snyder can do no wrong, you know, and he's just like amazing or whatever. Because, you know, I think that there was some things that could have been a little bit better in this movie. But I need to stop doubting him with these things. He knows how to bring emotional weight and crazy awesome spectacle. I totally want to watch this again, probably in theaters. And the CGI, although the CGI big bad at the end of the movie looked very CGI to me, the weight given to his actions, for the reasons I mentioned earlier, kept me invested and made him feel more real than any CGI bad guy I've ever seen, because I knew that when he destroyed things, something horrible was happening to somebody somewhere in this world, and I was feeling the weight of the destruction as he was going about doing things, and how freaking unstoppable of a problem he was. I mean, yeah, they really used that character well. Now, as far as relevance, as I mentioned before, Superman is modeling Jesus, particularly in the way Jesus was hated and misunderstood. And my wife picked up on a cross motif that was very appropriately used in the background of a major scene that I actually missed completely. I didn't miss the scene, I just missed the kind of like the subtle crosses in the background. So another reason to watch it again. And let's see, there was some talk. There were some talking head experts of various news programs. You know, when they're doing a story on CNN, and then they'll bring in some expert, and they'll cut to him and say, "Professor of blah blah blah, what do you say about this?" You know, and he'll say, "Blah, blah, 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 blah." So anyway, they had some talking heads, you know, that were commenting on the nature of Superman and his significance. And there's a reference to the fact that that one of these people says that Darwinian evolution means we're not special on this planet, just another organism, and the existence of aliens means we're even less special. And I'd actually argue that he's right. Under a naturalistic Darwinian view, which I do not take, but that we are not, there's nothing special, there's nothing particularly objectively valuable about humans. But since science alone is not equipped to reveal every truth in the universe, even a good scientist will tell you that, I'd argue that what makes us special is not our organic complexity or physical properties, but the fact that in an intangible way, we were made to somehow be reflections of the God, the creator of all reality, who also willingly chose to live with us, be humiliated, be tortured, be hated, be killed by us, also that our mess could be cleaned up by him and we could spend eternity in relationship with him. Why God would do that is completely beyond me at the end of the day, but the fact that he did gives humanity and each individual human immeasurable worth, immeasurable significance. Lex Luthor also brings up the age-old issue of God's love and his power. He claims that God cannot be both all-powerful and all-loving, presumably because he allows some horrific things to happen in the world without intervening to stop them. I think there are two modes that this claim can be made in. One is a mode of intellectual curiosity, like, I don't see how this can make sense. And in this mode, there are some very logical and satisfying responses to be given. But the other mode this claim can be made in is in the midst of suffering or difficulty or fear or great loss. A person making this claim about God in the midst of that, in the midst of suffering or fear, maybe in the anger they're feeling as they're in that stage of mourning some kind of loss, they probably don't need a logical response. They probably don't want that. They probably wouldn't listen to one anyway, because what they're feeling is just too intense, it's too painful, and I think we need to be respectful of that. In my experience, this question is almost always raised in that second mode, from a place of pain or loss or fear or suffering, and I think the right response, at least at first, is compassion and support for those experiencing pain and loss. Support of them, though perhaps not their view of God, and that's a tricky thing to do. But when someone is able to think about the issue with a clearer mind, I think we can respond by saying that God is both all-loving and all-powerful, and he will actually intervene to remove all evil and suffering, just maybe not as fast as you want him to. And it's interesting because after Lex says that line with Superman, a few lines later he says, "And now God bends to my will." And I think that's a little bit revealing, because really when we are putting that argument out there, we're kind of wanting God to bend to our will and like fix this now on our timetable when we want things to be fixed. Yet in the context of eternity, God's removal of all evil, whether he does it today or a billion years from now, are relatively in the same time frame in the context of eternity. The problem is that we think of this life as like the main event, and we don't really think about the fact that there's eternity after this. We think like this is the main event, this is all there is really worth thinking about, and so if our life doesn't go well, or if it goes horribly wrong, then God has failed us, and like we are just, our entire existence is just spoiled forever. But this life isn't the main event. I think that's so important for us to realize. This life is not the main event, and it will eventually be seen as a tiny speck on the timeline of eternity. A speck not noticeably larger in that context than a speck lasting even a billion years. Now, I have no idea what your tastes are, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, oh, that reminds me actually of a part of this movie. Anyway, Pater, do what you're doing already. Go in with some concerns about Lex Luthor and Ben Affleck. Don't get hyped about it, but don't fear it's going to suck either, despite what you might be hearing from other people. In fact, maybe don't even listen to negative reviews so that you're not going in with either hype or like a negative bias. Just go in and be open to see like, okay, well, what's this going to be? I don't know. Maybe I'll like it. Maybe I won't. Try to get to that flat line and stay there, and then just go in and enjoy this experience. It won't quite knock it out of the park for you like Man of Steel. It will be even more emotionally moving at times, and an experience you'll have virtually no idea how to improve upon. This is a fantastic, fantastic experience, Pater, that you are freaking gonna enjoy. And I did. Anyway, those are my thoughts on it. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. And then, oh yeah, I got my notes here that I should read from. You can also support this channel by visiting spiritblade.com and seeing the goodies that we have for you there. Please do like, share, and subscribe if you like this video, want to share it, and want more videos like it. Then that's how you make those things happen. And then please visit, boom, christiangeekcentral.com for a ton more content and community. I hope you join us there soon. See, do you guys notice I'm getting the button ready while I'm covering my eyes? As we continue, oh crap, now I lost it because I told you what I was doing. To geek out and seek the truth.